Take her, human, my daughter awaits you. Welcome among us. The transport shuttle descended through Velorum 7's amber atmosphere, and Captain Marcus Vale pressed his palm against the viewport, watching the alien landscape unfold below. Crystalline structures rose from lavender plains, catching the light of the system's twin suns. 3 years of space travel had led him here, to broker the most important alliance in human history. The landing pad hummed beneath his boots as he stepped onto Zetherian soil for the first time. The air carried an unfamiliar sweetness, and the gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's. A delegation waited at the platform's edge, their forms silhouetted against the brilliant sky. Governor Thane stepped forward, his ceremonial robes flowing like liquid silver. His skin bore the distinctive purple hue of the Zetherian people, deeper than twilight, marked with subtle patterns that seemed to shift in the light. His eyes held ancient wisdom as he extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Captain Vale, we welcome you to our home," Thane said in perfect English, his voice resonating with unexpected warmth. Marcus clasped his hand firmly. "Governor, the honor is mine. Earth sends its gratitude for your hospitality. Come, there is much to discuss. But first, meet my daughter." She emerged from behind her father like a dream-taking form. Seraphine stood tall and graceful, her purple skin luminescent in the sunlight, darker than amethyst but somehow radiant. Her hair fell in midnight waves past her shoulders, adorned with threads of silver. Her eyes, large and expressive, held depths Marcus couldn't immediately fathom. She wore robes of deep violet that accentuated her elegant figure. Marcus felt his breath catch. All his diplomatic training fled his mind. "Seraphine," Thane continued, his voice taking on ceremonial weight, "this is Captain Marcus Vale of Earth." She inclined her head, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Captain, your journey was long. I hope you will find our world worthy of it." Her voice was melodic, accented in ways that made familiar words sound like music. "I already do," Marcus replied, then cursed himself for sounding unprofessional. That evening, in the governor's grand hall with its soaring ceilings and walls that seemed to breathe with soft light, Thane dropped his revelation like a stone into still water. "Captain Vale, our alliance requires more than treaties and trade agreements. It requires trust, family, blood bonds." Thane's gaze was steady, serious. "I offer you my daughter's hand in marriage. Unite our peoples through your union. This is our way." Marcus's wineglass nearly slipped from his grasp. He looked at Seraphine, who sat across the table, her expression carefully neutral, though something flickered in her eyes. Was it hope? Fear? Resignation? "Governor, this is unexpected." "I'm honored, but you need not answer tonight," Thane interrupted gently. "Take time. Know my daughter. Understand what I offer. This is no small thing for either of our peoples." Later, as servants showed Marcus to his quarters, his mind spun. He'd expected negotiations, not a proposal that would bind his entire future. He stood on the balcony of his chamber, staring at unfamiliar constellations. Below, in the garden, he spotted her Seraphine, walking alone among glowing flowers. Even from this distance, she looked solitary, beautiful, and somehow sad. What had he gotten himself into? Morning arrived with soft chimes echoing through the corridors. Marcus found Seraphine waiting in the garden courtyard, surrounded by plants that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "My father believes in tradition," she said without preamble, "but I believe you should know who I am before any decision is made. Walk with me?" They spent the day exploring the colony. Seraphine guided him through markets where vendors sold fruits that changed color when ripe, past workshops where artisans shaped crystal into impossible forms. She taught him phrases in her language words that required him to soften his consonants and let syllables flow like water. "Your tongue is too harsh," she teased, laughing when he stumbled over a greeting. "Here, like this." She stepped closer, demonstrating, and Marcus found himself distracted by the proximity of her, the way her eyes caught the light. "Better," she said softly, not moving away. Days blurred together. They shared meals where she introduced him to Zitherian cuisine, some dishes delightful, others challenging. She showed him the archives where holographic histories played out in Midder, depicting her people's journey across the stars. Marcus reciprocated, sharing stories of Earth, of oceans and mountains she'd never seen, of humanity's own struggles and triumphs. "Do you feel trapped by this?" Marcus asked one afternoon as they sat beside a fountain that sang with crystalline tones. "Your father's offer?" Seraphine was quiet for a long moment. "I am the only child of the governor. My entire life has been duty, expectation, preparation for service. I always knew my marriage would be political." She turned to him, vulnerability flickering across her features. "But I never expected to feel curious about the man chosen for me." "Curious?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Among other things." A hint of challenge entered her voice. "You're different than I expected. Earth's reports made you sound rigid, military. But you laugh at my jokes, you try our food even when it frightens you. You listen when I speak about things that matter to me." "You matter," Marcus said before he could stop himself. The air between them shifted, charged with unspoken possibilities. That evening, she took him to the highest terrace of the governor's residence. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. Below, the city glowed like scattered jewels. "This is my favorite place," Seraphine said, leaning against the railing. "When I was young, I'd come here and imagine what existed beyond our world. Now you've brought those distant places to me." Marcus stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "I imagined aliens would be incomprehensible, completely foreign. But you're not. You're extraordinary, yes, but I understand you. Or I'm beginning to. Is that good or bad, Captain?" She turned to face him fully. "Marcus. Please, just Marcus." He reached out, hesitating before gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. Her skin was warm beneath his fingertips, softer than he'd imagined. "And it's very good." Seraphine's breath caught. She lifted her hand, placing it over his where it lingered near her cheek. The gesture was tentative, questioning. "I've never done this before," she whispered. "Chosen something for myself." "Neither have I," Marcus admitted. "Not like this." The space between them dissolved. Marcus cupped her face with both hands, giving her every chance to pull away. Instead, she leaned closer, her eyes fluttering closed. Their first kiss was gentle, exploratory, two people from different worlds learning each other's language in the most fundamental way. When they finally drew apart, both were breathing heavily. "This complicates things," Seraphine said, though she was smiling. "Absolutely," Marcus agreed, pulling her close again. "I don't care." They stood together as the suns vanished below the horizon, and Marcus realized with startling clarity that what had begun as duty was transforming into something far more dangerous and real. He was falling in love with her. The Festival of Lights transformed the entire colony into something out of a dream. Thousands of luminescent spheres floated through the air, released by citizens in a tradition celebrating Zetheria's ancient past. Marcus stood in his formal dress uniform, feeling distinctly underdressed as Zetherian nobility arrived in spectacular ceremonial attire. Then Seraphine appeared, and the entire gathering seemed to fade into background noise. She wore robes of shimmering purple, silk that flowed around her like liquid starlight. Intricate patterns had been painted on her skin in bioluminescent ink, traditional designs that traced her collarbones, wound up her arms, highlighted the graceful column of her throat. Her hair was adorned with crystalline ornaments that chimed softly with her movement. She was breathtaking. "You're staring," she said, though pleasure colored her tone. "I'm aware," Marcus replied, unable to look away. "I may never stop." She laughed, a sound that had become precious to him. "Come, the dancing will begin soon, and my father expects us to open the celebration." The traditional dance was complex, full of spinning movements and synchronized steps. Seraphine guided him through it patiently, her hands warm in his. As they moved together, Marcus became aware of the crowd watching, some faces approving, others skeptical, a few openly hostile. "Ignore them," Seraphine murmured, following his gaze. "Tonight is ours." They danced until Marcus's formal shoes hurt and his uniform jacket grew too warm. When they finally escaped the main celebration, Seraphine led him through winding paths to a secluded garden alcove. Flowering vines created a natural canopy overhead, and a small fountain burbled nearby. Floating lights drifted past, casting everything in gentle, shifting colors. "Better?" she asked, settling onto a carved stone bench. "Much." Marcus sat beside her, close enough that their thighs touched. "Though I enjoyed having you in my arms." Seraphine turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. My father's offer, I agreed to it before I met you. I thought it was my duty, and that duty would be enough. But now? Now?" He prompted gently. "Now I'm terrified," she admitted. "Because this isn't duty anymore. When I'm with you, I forget about treaties and alliances. I just want," she broke off, uncertainty flickering across her features. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, reaching for her hand. "This," she leaned forward and kissed him. This kiss was nothing like their first tentative exploration. This was heat and hunger, weeks of growing attraction igniting into flame. Marcus pulled her closer, and she came willingly, her hands sliding up his chest to his shoulders. The ceremonial paint on her skin felt slightly warm beneath his touch. They broke apart only when breathing became necessary. Seraphine's eyes were bright, her lips slightly swollen. "I was supposed to accept you out of obligation," she said breathlessly. "I was prepared to be cordial, respectful, to do my duty. But you've ruined that, Marcus Vale. Have I?" He traced the luminescent patterns on her collarbone, marveling at how they seemed to pulse faster under his touch. "Completely. Because now I'm falling in love with you, and that's infinitely more frightening than a political arrangement." Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. "Seraphine, you don't have to say it back," she interrupted quickly. "I know this is complicated. I know you came here with different expectations. I love you," Marcus said, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. "I think I started falling the moment I saw you, and every day since has only made it worse. Or better. I'm not entirely sure which." She laughed, the sound trembling with emotion. "Both, I think." They kissed again, longer this time, learning each other with hands and mouths and soft sighs. Above them, the festival lights continued their eternal dance, bathing two people from different worlds in shifting colors as they wrote their own future in stolen moments and whispered promises. When they finally returned to the celebration, hand in hand, Marcus noticed Governor Thane watching from a distance. The older man's expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes suggested satisfaction. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Marcus knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would face them all for the woman beside him. The backlash came swiftly. 3 days after the festival, Marcus received an encrypted transmission from Earth Command. The holographic image of Admiral Brennan materialized in his quarters. her expression carved from ice. Captain Vale, your reports have been concerning. Command questions whether you've maintained appropriate objectivity. Marcus straightened. Admiral, the alliance is proceeding exactly as planned, is it? Because it appears you've become personally involved with Governor Thane's daughter. Some officials believe you've been compromised, that the Zitharians are manipulating you through romantic entanglement. That's absurd, is it? Brennan's eyes were hard. You were sent as a diplomat, not a suitor. Command is considering your recall. The transmission ended before Marcus could respond. He stood frozen, anger and fear warring in his chest. Losing this mission meant losing Serafini. Meanwhile, Seraphine faced her own battles. Marcus found her in the archives that afternoon, her face drawn with tension. The Council of Elders met this morning, she said without preamble. Half of them oppose our union. They say humans are too violent, too unpredictable. They claim my father is risking our people's safety by binding us to Earth. What do you think? Marcus asked carefully. I think they're afraid of change. She turned to him, determination replacing the worry in her eyes. But I won't let fear dictate my future. Not anymore. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Protests erupted in the lower districts, both Cytherian, isolationists and human colonists who viewed the marriage as an unnatural mixing of species. Governor Thane increased security, but tension thickened the air like smoke. The violence came on the seventh day. Marcus was walking with Seraphine through the market district when the crowd turned hostile. Zetharian protesters surrounded them, shouting accusations. Before Marcus could call for security, someone threw a crystalline shard, a makeshift weapon that spun through the air toward Seraphine's head. Marcus moved on instinct, pulling her behind him. The shard caught his shoulder instead, tearing through his uniform and biting deep into muscle. Pain exploded through his arm, and blood startlingly red against the purple stones dripped onto the ground. Security forces arrived within moments, dispersing the crowd. But the damage was done. You're hurt, Seraphine said, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. Come, my chambers now. She led him through private corridors to her rooms, a space he'd never entered before. The decor was elegant but personal. Art on the walls, books scattered on surfaces, a balcony overlooking the gardens. She guided him to sit on the edge of her bed while she retrieved medical supplies. This is my fault, she said, carefully cutting away his torn uniform shirt. If we weren't, don't. Marcus caught her hand. Don't blame yourself for someone else's hatred. Her hands trembled as she cleaned the wound. The medical gel she applied was cool, immediately dulling the pain. As she worked, Marcus became acutely aware of their proximity, her focused expression. The way her hair fell forward, the warmth of her breath against his skin. You protected me, she said softly, bandaging his shoulder with practiced care. You could have been killed. Worth it, Marcus said simply. Seraphine's eyes met his, something fierce burning in their depths. You stubborn, beautiful fool. She kissed him hard, her hands framing his face. Marcus responded immediately, his good arm wrapping around her waist and pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, weeks of tension and fear and longing crystallizing into desperate need. Seraphine, he breathed against her lips. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She pushed him gently back onto the bed, mindful of his injury. I choose you, Marcus. Not because my father commands it. Not for duty or alliance. Because you're the first person who's ever made me feel like I'm more than just the governor's daughter. What followed was tender and passionate, a joining of not just bodies but souls. They learned each other with reverent touches and whispered confessions, building something beautiful from the chaos surrounding them. Marcus traced the luminescent patterns on her skin, discovering they extended further than he'd imagined, glowing brighter with her passion. She mapped the scars on his body, each one a story he shared between kisses. Afterward, they lay tangled together, the twin suns setting beyond the balcony and painting everything in amber light. "Whatever happens," Seraphine said, her head resting on his chest, "I won't regret this." "I won't regret you." Marcus pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Then we fight for this. For us. Together." She smiled, fierce and determined. Together. Outside, the protests continued. But in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms, they found the strength they'd need for the battles ahead. Governor Thane called an emergency assembly. Every major faction's Etherian elders, human officials, colony representatives gathered in the Great Hall. Marcus and Seraphine stood before them, hands clasped. Facing a sea of skeptical faces, Admiral Brennan's hologram flickered to life alongside the assembled crowd. "This proceeding will determine the future of the Alliance," she announced coldly. Elder Vorath, leader of the opposition, spoke first. "Governor, you offer your daughter to a species we barely know. Humans are warlike, destructive. This union is dangerous folly. And Zitharians are too passive, too willing to compromise," countered Captain Stevens from the human delegation. "Vale has been seduced into a trap. This marriage serves only Zitharian interests." Arguments erupted from all sides. Marcus felt Seraphine's hand tighten in his. "Enough!" Governor Thane's voice cut through the chaos. "You will hear from those most affected by your debate." He gestured to Marcus and Seraphine. "Speak." Marcus stepped forward, but Seraphine moved with him. They would do this together. "You're all right," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the hall. "Humans and Zitharians are different. We have different histories, different fears, different ways of seeing the universe. But that's exactly why this alliance matters." Seraphine continued seamlessly. "For years, my people have isolated ourselves, afraid of the galaxy beyond our borders. We've stagnated, grown comfortable, but not truly alive. Marcus's people have pushed ever outward, sometimes recklessly, but always reaching for tomorrow. 3 weeks ago," Marcus said, "I arrived here expecting to negotiate a treaty. Instead, I found something unexpected, someone who challenged me. Taught me, showed me that the unknown isn't something to fear but to embrace. I was raised to believe duty came before everything," Seraphine added, emotion threading through her words. "But Marcus taught me that duty without heart is hollow. Yes, our marriage would cement an alliance. But we don't stand here because we must. We stand here because we choose to." Marcus pulled her closer. "Look at us. A human and a Zetharian from worlds that had never met until recently. We've learned each other's languages, shared each other's cultures, built something real from uncertainty. If we can bridge that divide, so can our peoples." "You fear we're too different," Seraphine said, addressing Elder Vorath directly. "But our differences are our strength. Humans bring innovation, courage, the drive to explore. Zitharians bring wisdom, patience, harmony. Together, we could build something greater than either species alone. You think one marriage will solve centuries of mistrust?" Admiral Brennan challenged. "No," Marcus admitted. "But it's a beginning. Every great alliance in history started with a single act of faith. Someone had to be first. Someone had to risk being vulnerable, being hurt, being wrong. That someone is us." Seraphine's voice rang with conviction. "We're not asking you to understand everything immediately. We're asking you to trust that love, real, chosen love, can be the foundation for something lasting. Trust that two people from different worlds can forge a path forward together." Silence filled the great hall. Marcus and Seraphine stood together, waiting, their future hanging in the balance. Governor Thane rose. I offered my daughter an alliance, yes. But I also watched her these past weeks. I saw her laugh more than she has in years. I saw her come alive. He turned to the elders. Is that not what we want for our children? A future where they thrive, not merely survive? Elder Vorath studied the couple for a long moment. The heart is not always wise, but it's honest, Seraphine replied. And honesty is the only foundation that lasts. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Vorath inclined his head. Perhaps we could try. Admiral Brennan's expression softened fractionally. Command will observe how this develops. Captain Vale, you may proceed. But know that Earth will be watching. The tension broke like a dam. Not everyone was convinced. Some faces remained skeptical, but the major opposition had shifted to cautious acceptance. The wedding ceremony took place 1 month later, blending traditions from both worlds. Marcus wore formal Earth dress uniform adorned with Zephyrian ceremonial sashes. Seraphine wore robes that merged human white with Zephyrian purple, creating something entirely new. As they exchanged vows words in both languages, promises that transcended culture, Marcus looked into Seraphine's eyes and saw his entire future reflected there. I, Marcus Vale, take you, Seraphine, as my partner in all things. I promise to learn your language, honor your people, and love you with everything I am. I, Seraphine, daughter of Thane, take you, Marcus, as my companion across the stars. I promise to embrace your world, respect your people, and love you beyond measure. When they kissed, the assembled crowd erupted in celebration, both human cheers and Zephyrian harmonic chimes, blending into something beautiful and unprecedented. Later, on the balcony of their new shared quarters, Marcus and Seraphine stood wrapped in each other's arms, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Do you think it will work? Seraphine asked softly. This grand experiment of ours? Marcus kissed her temple. I think we'll argue sometimes. Our peoples will have disagreements. There will be challenges we can't even imagine yet. That's not very romantic, husband. But, Marcus continued, smiling, I also think that if a stubborn human captain and a brilliant Zetherian governor's daughter can find love across the void of space, anything is possible. Seraphine turned in his arms, her smile radiant. Then let's prove them all right. Let's build that impossible future together. As they kissed beneath unfamiliar stars, two worlds moved closer, guided by the simple truth that love, real, chosen, fought for love, could indeed transcend any boundary. Their story was just beginning, and the universe stretched out before them, full of infinite possibilities. The end.